and those are the only two courses that can handle my slice. So I play on those two courses, and I enjoy Cypress Head very much. I think they've done a phenomenal job, and we should. It is a city-owned amenity. We should take care of it. We should have a quality golf course for our people. Now, I agree with Ted in the sense that it's not the role of government to be involved in the golfing business. So if we were going to start from day one and somebody were to ask me, should we get in the golfing business and purchase a golf course, I would say no. In this case, though, I fall a little differently. I agree, I like what Sarah said earlier. You go with the previous decisions that were made by council and you keep the promises that were in place. I would not want to break the promise that we made years ago to these residents over there. The point was made earlier about the increased tax base and revenue that and the property values that have been in place over there. The first thing out there was the golf course. That's what started it all. Sterling Chase, Sable Creek, Water's Edge, the Cypress Head community, all these communities out there that have enormously raised up our tax base in the city were started at that golf course. So I would have no plans to sell it. I would stay in it. I would have gotten it at the beginning because I don't believe that is the role. At the same time, it is an amenity. It is a Parks and Rec. It's the only Parks and Rec that pays for itself on a day-to-day operation. Is it in some debt? Yes, it is. But my feeling is it's far outweighed by the taxable value that we have that has brought in over the course of the generation that's been there.
Thank you, Jason.
Okay. I think that we should have the golf course. I think we should have a public golf course. I think we should have public soccer fields. I think we should have public baseball fields. I think we should have public swimming pools. I think part of what a city does is they make amenities for their citizens, as some other people said. I do have a problem with the fact that the golf course doesn't seem to be as public as it could be. And I would really like to see it much more available at reduced rates to young people. I would like to see it a much more used golf course. But do I think it's proper for a city to own a golf course? Yes. It's just as proper as to own a soccer field or a baseball field or a swimming pool. And one of the younger speakers mentioned that maybe we shouldn't run it, maybe it should be leased out. I don't have a problem with being leased out. I don't know how many people are aware, but you actually own the Port Orange swimming pool at the YMCA. That's a Port Orange owned facility, and it's run by the YMCA. So if it was more feasible to keep the golf course and let some other entity run it, I wouldn't have a problem with that, as long as it was available to the public. The question about, do I think the addition has been well and that the golf course is in good condition, I couldn't tell you. I wouldn't know if a golf course was in good condition or bad condition. All I know is it's a good thing for the public to have.
Thank you very much. We'll stick with you on this next question. Going to change it up once again. Let's talk about city staff. Recent years, as I've seen this building and a few others, recent years have seen an exodus of some key city staff members for a variety of reasons. What are your plans to have the right people in the right role and to keep them there?
Okay. First of all, I don't know how many people are aware of this, but I could have all the plans in the world, and every member of the city council could have all the plans in the world. But Port Orange is a city manager type government, and right now the city charter says that the city manager hires all department heads by him or herself. Of course, you can influence it because the city manager serves at your pleasure. In one of the earlier debates, one of the gentlemen suggested that perhaps we should change the charter so that the council has some say or also participates in the selection of department heads. And I think that's an idea worth pursuing. As far as what to keep the department head there, I would like to see more hiring locally. And I don't know how many people are aware of this, but last night we were introduced to Lynn Stevens, who is a lady from Daytona, was hired as the new department head for the Public Utilities Division. And I really applaud Manager Johansson for that decision, because he picked somebody who has ties to the neighborhood and will want to stay here. Because one of the other difficulties that sometimes arises in city government, and I think this is one of the reasons that we lost the previous public utilities person, is there are people who are sort of professional department heads, and their allegiance is to their career, not to their municipality where they're currently working. So the choice of Mr. Johansson for a local person was very good, and I would encourage that practice, provided there is a suitable person in the locality to be continued, because these are people who are dedicated to our area. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Well,
Mr. Burnett.
Well, it has been suggested that, and let me preface my comments by saying, yeah, we have led some city staff. Some of those people needed to go. And when you bring in a new city manager, I think it's a good thing that that person is allowed to build his or her team the way they see fit, because that's what they're paid to do, and that's precisely what they're supposed to do by charter. Port Orange went through a period where we stagnated. We sat on our hands, we stagnated, and any business that stagnates out there doesn't last very long. That's why you always have to have systems of continuous improvement in place, and we lost that edge. Now, we have gone through a lot of department heads, and I think we've got a lot of lean, mean, hungry people. We've been able to retain some of the best and the brightest and bring in more expertise. So I think that we are more and more on the right track with this. One thing that I disagree with, and it's certainly a valid viewpoint, should the city council have a say in the hiring of department heads? And I disagree with that, because the city manager is accountable for the actions and decisions that he makes to the council. The city manager brings expertise, and he's able to tap expertise so that he can select people as part of his profession. I think that when you have a meddling council, our job up here is to set policy, good, strong policy, and the city manager's job is to facilitate operations. That's an operational function. And when you cross those paths, instead of building a horse, you could end up with a camel. I don't like that analogy, but it seems to fit very well. You get too many hands in the pot. And then you also don't do a very good job of trying to build a talent pool to recruit from, because you don't end up being seen as a desirable city to work for when it's hard to get a job there, and you've got 7 bosses instead of just one. So I like the direction that we've taken, and I think we're still traveling the road, but we're on the right road.
Thank you, Don. Mr. Knopfler.
The exodus that's referred to in that question is greatly exaggerated. If you take out people that are moving on for family reasons, for professional growth reasons, take those numbers out of that exodus, and you are left with a bunch of deadbeats that needed to be gotten rid of. And I'm glad now others on this dais are finally prepared to admit that. But for too long, we let those deadbeats stay here and get a paycheck. Yes, deadbeats, the guy in utilities, the guy in finance. They should never have been hired for those positions. Really, they shouldn't have. And it's for that reason that I suggest we have a charter change and involve council in the hiring and firing of major department heads. It's not acceptable to have only a nuclear option. The only thing we can do is fire our manager. We can't do that. You can't do that on a regular basis. So there's got to be some mechanism in place to for council to look in on these department heads. It was said earlier about the need for a council continuity, and let's acknowledge and stay with previous decisions. Well, let's go back to Riverwalk for a minute, and let's go back to 07, 08, when these high-rise condos were approved. There was very much a quid pro quo, and that quid pro quo was that the point, the old Sweetwater's Point, would carry recreation and conservation zoning, which it does to this day, with the idea being it would be the focal point of the park. What council is planning on doing now is quietly restoring commercial rights back to that point with absolutely zero quid pro quo. So if we're going to be concerned with what previous councils did and their reasoning, we should go back and acknowledge the fact that the condos were approved in a trade-off where council of that day held their nose and said, yeah, we'll go with these high-rises that no one wants, but in return, the Sweetwater Point will be the focal part of Riverwalk Park. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Mr. Green.
Thank you. I want to stay on task here, and the question was, in the recent years and seen the mass exodus of key city staff members, what is my plan to have the right people in the right role to keep them? I'm gonna say this about that, the mass exit had a lot of things to do with it was a whole snowball and the right perfect storm. When the economy tanked, morale was down, money was down, the budget was down, and the morale was down. The mass exit was a direct result of the economy. Now, we had guys in there like Ken Parker who gave 25+ years to his community. Could Ken Parker have gone somewhere and made a hell of a lot more money? Absolutely. But he stayed with his roots in Port Orange. And I want to see people who are going to stay in our community. I want our city manager to stay in our community. My plan is to put 100% support to within and behind my city manager and my city attorneys. And I'm going to allow them to do their jobs, okay? And I'm going to monitor their progress. I want to set the policies and the procedure that require and let our city manager do his job effectively. I will do my best to maintain a positive work environment and be conducive to productivity and respect, and not call people peg legs and dirt bags as we have here. I'm not gonna be that guy. I wanna have a positive city work environment and going forward, let my city manager do his job and stay positive.
Thank you, Vance. Mr. Tremont.
All right, the question is, how do we keep the right people in place, the city staff from going away? Multiple ways of doing that. Number one, as you want to show your value, we need to pay them well. A lot of our people are underpaid. That's really how you show your value and show how you appreciate what they do. As a teacher, understand what it feels like to feel undervalued and underpaid and underappreciated. So that's one area that we miss the mark here a little bit. Also, leadership, this is one of those situations where everything is manageable if you have the right leadership in place. It all matters, what people are looking for, good leadership where they want to work from. And I'm going to throw a bone out to our city manager right now. I personally think he's doing a good job, and I can see merits for changing the charter and giving the council more discretion of that. I see merits. I respectfully fall on the other side of that. I don't want all the people in the staff to have 6 or 7 different bosses. That creates for a very tough work environment to be in. So what you do as a basketball coach, when you're putting a team together and a staff together, number one, you want to put people in position. You can see why I got twisted on that. Put people in position to be successful. Find out where their areas of gifts and specialties are, and put them in that right position. Number two, you empower them and equip them to do the job that they're supposed to do. Responsibility without authority will lead to failure every single time. So those are some avenues in place that you put in what a good leadership does. Another thing that a good leader does, surrounds himself with people that are smarter than them and that are capable of doing the job that they're assigned to do. And my compliments to our city manager right now. You look at the hirings that he's made with our public utilities, our police chief. We've got a gem with him, a fire chief. And let's not also not neglect the fact that he brought Wayne Clark back. That was a huge hire. He is the best kept secret in Volusia County, in my opinion. And that's a demonstration of what our city manager, and how he's looking for the future and how he's leading his team.
Thanks, Chase. We'll stick with you on this next one. We touched on it just a little bit earlier. US 1 corridor. We've been talking a lot about Dunlawton. So while Dunlawton seems to garner the most attention when discussing the city's main roads, well, what about Port Orange's original main drag? Do you have any plans to address the issues that are contributing to the blight on US 1?
I do. Was it?
No, you're good. Yeah, we're just starting back over with our original rotation.
Okay.
So it's all you.
Great question. I want to preface it also, I don't want to forget about Nova Road either. That's also a gateway into our community, and that needs to have a serious discussion at some point as well, Nova Road. So with that said, with the question being Ridgewood, this is obviously not an easy fix. This is a problem from Edgewater all the way up to Ormond, and nobody's solved the problem yet. So clearly, if it were easy, it would have been done by now. We have an opportunity. Now, I don't believe, as it's been spoken of before, I don't believe Riverwalk is going to be the catalyst to renew Dunlawton. I think Riverwalk is going to be the catalyst, Ridgewood. I think Riverwalk is going to move a little further north. We've still got a long drag between Dunlawton and Nova Road. So what do you do? Well, the problem started years ago when we first annexed in Harbor Oaks and Allendale. problem is, when we annex that area, we annexed as is. What that means is these businesses over there have kept what's called entitlements, meaning they are allowed to keep operating under the same county code and not have to transition into the city code. That's an issue. That's a legal issue that we really need to get on, because you know what? I'm all for free enterprise. I am for the free market. But I'm also of the understanding and common sense where it says if you do the same thing you've done all the time, you're not going to get different results. That's the definition of insanity. Roosevelt said it's common sense to take a method and try it. If it fails, admit it frankly, but try again. Above all, try something. Something needs to be done, and it starts with getting our legal team trying to get rid of those entitlements, bring these businesses up to code. Now, when they build something new, then they have to do it up to code the rest of Port Orange, but not as is. And I think that's where the problem starts, right then and there. There's a lot of other things that we can do. Obviously, I don't have time to get into all that. But you know, when a business is looking to clamp down, they're looking at two things: traffic flow and clientele. Well, clientele and traffic flow is weak in that area. And there's some things that we can do done. Obviously, can't get into all that right now.
Thank you, Chase. Jones.
First of all, Chase mentioned that US 1, as you travel down to all the municipalities, tends to be a problem. And this is my personal opinion. I'm not a city planner, but if I'm a developer and I want to do a development and then get my money and get out, it's a lot easier to go to undeveloped land where I don't have to deal with the current problems. And this is why consistently you see all in, I don't care which municipality you go to, you see all this development occurring west of I-95, because that's undeveloped land. You don't have to do anything with what's currently there. It's like your house. When you have to fix the plumbing, established plumbing is a lot harder to fix than when you're putting in brand new plumbing. So that's part of the reason we're there. So what you have to do is you have to make some incentives for these developers to want to come into an area which is a little bit harder to deal with. And I don't see any difference in making incentives for developers in certain areas to bring in certain businesses than when we give someone who is going to bring a new company into town, we give them huge tax breaks and stuff. So somehow we have to make incentives for people who want to come in and put in nice developments, good stores, this type of thing, to not just have everything along Dunlawton and further west. The other thing, and I think if you look at Orlando, when you look at the cities, you have to make these areas pedestrian and cycle friendly. People, if you look at the cities that are successful in this century, people are able to stroll down the street, they're able to, push a tricycle. So I would ask for that. And the third thing, as I have my few minutes, is to somehow, as much as possible, keep the view of the Halifax intact. Put in height restrictions. And those are my suggestions for improving the US 1 corridor.
Thank you.
When we take a look at the Ridgewood area, it's been suggested that it's not government's role to do anything. Well, I think that a hands-off policy is part of what has let Ridgewood slide the way it has. We have to be involved down there. We have to do things differently, and letting the free market fix it has not worked. It's only slid further. I've seen the old motels down there become nothing more than dens of iniquity and full of crime, and that's part of the reason why we've been working to acquire them and rip them down. We don't need those. Nobody's going to want to open a business next to things like that. So we have to fix that first, and that starts with code enforcement. I don't think that we as a city have come far enough. I think we've improved dramatically when we brought in a code enforcement a chief to be in charge of, but we've only got 4 code officers to cover the entire city. And I think we can keep them busy down there daily in just that one area. So it's something that we need to find a way to do better. We can't be hands-off. Seems like what we attract down there is car lots. We need, if we took that Ridgewood corridor plan, which we've had on the shelf, and fund it and do things with it, acquire properties, put blocks of land together, get rid of the undesirables, and that's certainly a crime enforcement issue as well as a code enforcement issue. We can make, and then invest down there to make the place look better if we invest in the street and the streetscapes and the things that we need to do. Even modest improvements improve the pride of the people who live there, and then they invest in their own properties. So we need to do something. Keeping our hands off is not an answer, and we've done that for way too long. We took in Harbor Oaks, we took in Allendale into the city in 1999. We took them in and grandfathered the county codes. It's time to sunset those. We need to handle that down there the same way we do the rest of the city.
Thank you, Don. Mr. Nafto.
The downturn that we all see on US 1 is a function of economics and demographics. US 1 corridor has been left behind, and there's not a gosh darn thing we can do about it. Not as long as we have freedom to move and freedom to invest and freedom to purchase where we want to. People are not going to US 1. Now, Port Orange does participate in ALF development. I think they do so in the wrong areas. We don't need any more ALFs over on Herbert Street that's congested. So I would certainly encourage directing in a serious manner any future ALF development to be positioned down there in US 1. It's ideal for that. And if you've ever been down in New Smyrna lately, you can see the old DVCC college building being renovated into a wonderful ALF. And that's, I think, where we need to go with the US 1 corridor. I do want to comment on my candidate, though. Your great disdain for the word peg leg, my lord, but he doesn't seem to have any problem with his dad, the mayor, referring to you all in the audience on occasion as cripples or as asses, or telling you people to get your SHIT together. And I will say right here now, Mr. Green, that if I'm the mayor, I will not use any of those words, as I would hope you would make the same, perhaps admonishment for the times they have been used in this chamber. Thank you.
Ted. Mr. Green.
Thank you. And again, I can't help any of that, Ted. That has nothing to do with me. The US 1 corridor used to be the heart and soul of Port Orange, and I'll go back to say it again. I miss the Indian that was in the front of Count's Western Wear. I still miss it to this day. Going to the west side of Port Orange used to be going to Nova Road, okay? If you lived on the west side of the tracks, you were like in the country. So what happens to US 1 is important. Several things happened to US 1 over time. The road got widened. The land in those lots were small, already small, and so what happens is a majority of those lots down there become non-conforming to our codes today. They don't have enough land to put the proper parking and the handicap spaces and the landscape buffers and everything it takes for a business to strive in that district. We as city leaders here need to think outside the box when it comes to our planning and zoning. Do I want to subsidize a business? Absolutely not. Do I want to help a business in the zoning aspect or the planning aspect of saying,